Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. My next guest is a wildly prolific and successful independent film producer whose latest movie, Native Son, premiered at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival, where it sold to HBO for 8 figures. He has been sober for 14 years, and so much has changed for him in that time span. He shares some amazing war stories here from his past, and while in recovery we like to say that we will not regret the past nor shut the door on it, I take perhaps a little too much delight in hearing them. Won't you please welcome Michael Sherman.
For me, at 14 years, to have the thought of suicide is just like, I've never had that before, of like giving up. I don't give up. I'm not a quitter. You know, I'm not, you know, when I drank and used, I didn't always follow through with things, but I've never been a quitter.
Okay, let's start this shit. We're gonna get into some stuff, I can tell.
My sobriety date is March 13th, 2005. So this March, I'll have 14 years of sobriety.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, but I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland.
Wow.
Went to school at Boston University.
Right.
And came to Los Angeles. Well, went to New York for a year after school, and then came to LA to make movies, and then left, and then came back after I got sober.
Right. Oh, interesting.
So I've been back since 2006. Spent 1 year in Chicago getting clean. I lived in Cabrini Green in the ghetto.
Wow.
In one of the townhomes that they had built. There were still 3 towers up at the time when I lived there.
Huh.
Which was awesome. I mentored kids at the local Walter Payton school center.
Right.
And one of those kids actually, who was my neighbor, I put him in 2 movies. So he was in Kicks and he was in Native Son. This kid, Lamont Johnson.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool.
So when did you start, start boozing? Like when did it all begin?
First time I ever boozed, my grandma was a big boozer.
Right. What did she drink?
She drank I feel like she drank bourbon, but she also I remember she used to always have something at night.
Right.
And it definitely, I know she was boozing at night because she had dentures, and once in a while they'd get a little loose. And she'd be like, "You're bad," because she'd watch me quite a bit when I was younger, and we would play. God, what's the name of the game? Rummy 500.
Oh, yeah, sure. I used to play that.
And so one time she gave me a sip of beer. Because
How old were you at that point?
I was 10.
10, right. Where are you? You're in Baltimore?
Baltimore,
right.
Yeah. And I was super well behaved, chilling.
Right. You were a good kid?
Yeah, no. I was anxious.
Right.
And I was a very big athlete, so I always...
What'd you play? Everything?
Everything.
Yeah, back then you played everything.
Soccer, basketball, tennis, lacrosse.
Right.
Just never football.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, she gave me a sip of beer, but I'm not one of those guys who was I felt different. I never felt a part of. I never had that problem. I just liked alcohol.
So when she gave you that, do you remember that being a good feeling?
I remember I liked the taste of it.
Right.
I liked the way it felt, but I wasn't drunk. I took a sip,
Right. And
then when I was probably 13, I met a couple bad kids in my neighborhood.
Right.
And we started smoking weed, and I would my brothers were my older brother was a Rastafarian.
Right.
He literally had dreadlocks and drove a milk truck. And then my other brother was touring with the Grateful Dead. He went to Colorado College. So they would have weed, and sometimes I would sneak in their room and try to steal their stuff.
And would they give you pot?
No, never. They would always yell at me and punch me, and beat me up. But I was
they don't want you consuming their drugs.
But I was that's God calling. Yeah, and so I started sifting weed from them, and then that began me to when I was 15, I was drinking all the time.
How did you get to drinking all the time? I mean, are you
I was literally hanging out
at your
with
school?
The worst kids you could think of in my neighborhood in Baltimore.
That'll do.
They were derelicts. One guy wore he looked like Neo before the Matrix. He was a rave guy, and he was the guy. He was so shady. And he was the guy who would be I got opium today. I got this. I got that. And so slowly, I just started ingesting.
What do you think drew yourself to those people?
Possibly because maybe I think about like being the third child in my
Right.
family.
Mhm.
I think about like my two older brothers were like just always crazy as kids.
Right.
And then when they left the house, it was just my little brother and I. And we were so different from them. Like my little brother and I.
How old's your little
literally-
brother? How much?
He just turned 39
Right.
today. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Matt.
So that makes him how much younger than you?
He's 4 years younger.
4 years
than me.
younger,
Yeah.
right.
And he and I, like, we just were different. We thought we were black. Like we
Right.
used to wear
Why?
starter.
Why did you?
It was just like our culture. We
Right.
grew up with hip hop, and like, you know, to me, like going to the mall and begging my mom to buy me like skids and cross colors was like my favorite activity. And you know, we would like shave Charlotte Hornets in the back of our head, and like we would listen to NWA.
Well, and what were your parents doing? What did they do for work? Were they like?
My mom stayed at home because she had 4 boys. She was a school teacher.
Yeah, that's a fucking lot of work.
And then she was a philanthropist, and she still is active.
Right.
And my dad was, you know, he always worked. He was not. My dad wasn't around as a kid.
What kind of stuff did he do?
He was just like in business, so
Right.
you know, like we moved around for his job.
And like, so I mean, I don't know. Were your parents like, how'd I end up with black kids?
No, I think my mom just was like, dude, my parents are so cool.
So they were supportive.
Yeah,
they were like,
like-
yeah, that's cool. I mean, my
Yeah.
parents would have been like, what? You want what? Huh?
Yeah, they were
No,
like,
no.
whatever you're into, like, you know, go with it as
That's
long as you're not
cool.
like
Right.
doing anything negative or like causing harm to other people, you know.
Right.
But like, yeah, that was just like we were just two different kids than my older brothers. We were like the opposite of them. Like I never listened to the Grateful Dead. Like I never drove a milk truck. Like I had like a Honda Prelude with tinted windows.
But sort of the same thing. It's just it's like a different side of the same coin. I mean, you're like seeking out sort of a more like whatever gangster sort of lifestyle, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I mean, I think like that's the thing too. Is
That's
like
a
I was having this
cultural
conversation the
shift,
other
too.
day. It's like, you know, it's so funny because like every single thing you do in life is around fashion.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if you look at somebody, you probably know immediately what they listen to or what they like because
Totally.
there's like a dress code for everything, which is so interesting to me. So we
It's
were
so
in the dress
depressing.
code of like the hip hop realm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And then you just kind of go down that sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, and so like, you know, I started hanging out with like bad people, and you know, in when I left Baltimore, I had done almost every drug you could think of except heroin
Right.
and cocaine.
Right.
I'd never done cocaine.
Right.
Then I arrive at Boston University,
Right.
and by then I like literally think I'm a thug.
And have you done well in school at that point? You must have done
Yeah,
pretty
of
well.
course,
You got
yeah,
into
I went
Boston
into film
University,
school- I went
right?
to film
Studying
school at
film,
BU,
right?
yeah.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, I was always good at school.
So you
know?
think? So
Not
are
a
you
dummy?
right?
Just
yeah.
look dumb.
You don't like that. Dumb.
Yeah.
So you think? So you like get to be? You think you're a sort of a thug and like
Completely. I fall in. I'm playing intramural basketball. I
Right.
meet this guy. I can't say his name, right?
Right.
Okay, so I meet this guy, right? And he comes up to me afterwards. He goes, "White boy, you the craziest motherfucker I've ever met." Right?
Where is that guy now?
Do
we know him? No, we don't know him.
We don't
All
want.
right.
We don't want to know where that guy is. Anyway, he befriends me. He takes me under his wing. Next thing you know, I'm selling massive amounts of cocaine
Right.
during my college years.
Nice.
So I have bricks and bricks and bricks.
And you must be making bank, huh?
Yeah, but I cut into my profit
Right,
quite a bit.
right,
So,
right.
but I had never done cocaine, and I was always one of those guys. I was like, I'll never do cocaine.
Yeah.
And
me
then
too.
Miss Puerto Rico showed up at college my freshman year.
Right.
And this Puerto Rican kid was
Literally
on my
Miss
floor.
Puerto
Yeah,
Rico.
yeah.
Right.
This Puerto Rican kid was on my floor, and he was like, "Yo," he's like, I'm gonna go out with my homegirl's Miss Puerto Rico. You should come. I should introduce you to her." And I was like, "Fuck yeah, Miss Puerto Rico."
Right.
And like, mind you, like I was way late to everything. Like I lost my virginity to a whore in Amsterdam when I was 19.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
I had not had a lot of experience.
Right.
And that summer I caught up before I went to school.
Right.
But like I get to school, I'm like, Miss Puerto Rico, hell yeah, I'm
Right.
in. That was the first time I ever tried cocaine. It changed my life forever.
Right.
Because I think not only did it accelerate my alcoholism,
Right.
because I then found out that I could drink and do cocaine and
Totally.
drink more.
Yeah, yeah.
Because my deep-rooted problem is I love alcohol.
Right.
I'm a drunk.
Right.
I like to black out. I like to punch people in
Totally.
the face, and I like to fuck girls. That's like
Right.
that was my exact that was my life. I was like, if that didn't happen in a night, I failed. Like that was my entire goal.
Right.
Every day I woke up, it was those three things were the three things I needed to accomplish.
Right.
And like that night of doing cocaine set me off.
This was Miss Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I was 19. I was a freshman in college, and then I met this guy. And next thing you know, like,
and
I was selling cocaine
all fucking night that night and like
I'm
into the next day?
Night,
You're right.
I mean, you have no idea the shit that I saw in college and the shit that I did. I did terrible things and I saw.
So
terrible things.
you meet her and like, and there's the dude from the basketball court. That do they know each other, or is this like? But he becomes your
he's my guy.
Right.
He's my guy. Right. I'm under his wing. He protects me.
Right.
He takes care of me. Like, I'll never forget. I got robbed in college.
Yeah.
And I called him.
What happened? You were like,
I got home one night and my safe was gone.
Right.
And like, you know, like back then, like you're like a petty drug dealer.
Yeah.
But like I had this like super hot Cuban girlfriend and I had bought her like this diamond ring that I was gonna give her. But it was probably like worth like, you know, $1,500, but I paid like $3,000 for it. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, that they stole my safe. Now she doesn't get the ring. What am I gonna do? And I called this guy and I was like, I got robbed.
Holy shit.
And he's like, do you have any information? I was like, well, I met this dude who I was talking to about, and he knew that I had, because I had like 1,000 ecstasy pills in my thing too. And remember, I got to pay back the ecstasy pills.
Yeah.
So
we made a whole movie about that.
Yeah. So
it's called 7 Minutes. They have all their ecstasy stolen. They have to like figure out how they're gonna fucking get the money back. Yeah, they rob a bank.
Yeah. Well,
so they don't get killed by the dealer.
Yeah, I had like 1,000 pills in there.
Right.
And so like, you know, I got to figure out how to pay for it. And so I call this guy, and next thing you know, he and I are going to this guy's apartment. I mean, this is like how crazy I was in college. Like, I never thinking that I could go to jail, by the way.
Right.
Like, never once did it cross my mind, like, hey, this could put me in prison for like life.
Right.
So he's got a gun.
That's
we
amazing.
go. He knocks on the door. The guy is like, who is it? He's like, don't fucking worry about it. Open the door. Next thing you know, this guy lets this pit bull. This is a terrible story. My wife's probably going to hate me for telling the story because I don't know if I've
just tell her not to listen to it.
But like, opens the door. The dog comes out. He fires 2 shots, kills the dog.
Right.
Goes in. He ties the guy up. He beats the living shit out of him. He takes everything he can. I get nothing, by the way, just so you know. Like, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to get some money back. I'm going to get something.
Holy
he gives
shit.
me nothing. He goes, don't ever let yourself get robbed again.
Right.
And that was like my lesson of like, okay, so I got to really be aware of like my surroundings.
Right.
So then like I made sure I changed who I hung around with.
Yeah.
You know, I no longer like was in Dorchester.
Right.
Dorchester was a problem for me.
Right.
I got into a lot of problems in Dorchester.
It was shady.
Yeah. And also like, no, I mean, look, even though I acted like a thug and wanted to be a thug, I never wanted to shoot somebody, you know?
Sure.
I was never thinking like, I'm gonna kill that guy. I'll kill that guy.
Right.
You know, I'd scrap, but like, you know, I'm one of 4 boys. We scrap.
Right. Yeah.
But like, so like that guy was the craziest guy I'd ever been around. When I graduated college, unfortunately, my little brother got sucked into him for 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And like, they were like gambling and doing all this other crazy stuff. And he like screwed my brother out of like $100,000.
Right.
And then my brother left Boston and I've never had contact with him since.
God.
I heard at
you guys
one
aren't
point,
friends on Facebook?
No, I don't do social media for that reason. But I heard at one point, like somebody smashed a bottle on his face and he had 110 stitches.
Jeez.
And I smiled and I said, okay, you know what? That's karma for that guy. Cause he put me through misery, man.
It's interesting. Yeah. So you graduate, right?
I did. I graduated on time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What were your grades like?
I got mostly B's.
Right. That's all right. And then what do you do?
So I graduate Boston University. I win I won like my movie like won the film award there.
Oh, really?
It was like called the Redwood Film Festival or something. Yeah.
What was the movie about?
I did what I wanted to make was actually like a gangster film with all little people.
Right.
But I couldn't find enough little people to cast, so I had to scrap that idea. And then I shot a documentary about gambling at Suffolk Downs.
Interesting. You see, that's just proof that necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah. So then I leave Boston University. I go to New York for a year. I work in New York.
What are you doing for work?
I worked for a company called R. Greenberg and Associates. It was the
accounting.
No, it was like film and television. They created like a ton of logos. Like they created the Nike Just Do It stuff. Right. They created the AT&T logo.
Right. And are you doing?
I was just like working underneath this guy that I knew from Baltimore, who's the biggest asshole ever. And if he's listening, you're an asshole. And you know who you are. And then like finally I got out of that job, which was great. And then I was like, I'm gonna move to LA.
And are you
I'm
are
gonna
you
make
dealing drugs at this point, or
no,
you're done?
I stopped dealing drugs. Yeah,
right.
But then I started dealing drugs when I moved to LA.
Right.
Yeah.
So you come out to LA. You're basically like, fuck this advertising.
Yeah, I was like, I want to be a music video director.
Right.
Like that was my goal. Like
interesting.
I like wrote a Hot Boys video treatment that I was like, I'm gonna make this video. So I flew out to LA and moved here. That did not work. That did not happen. I worked for Wayne Isham, who was a music video director, for like a year and a half. Hated it.
How'd you get that job?
Through a friend from college.
Right.
And then...
Where are you living in LA?
I was living in Century City, which is, by the way, the worst place ever.
Never,
if you're thinking of moving to Los Angeles, do not move to Century City unless you're like 80 years old and
it's all like
eating soup at the
Wallace
mall.
Annenberg lives there and shit.
It's terrible. Yeah. So yeah, I lived there, and I got kicked out of that apartment, and then I moved to Hollywood with a friend. Got kicked out of that place, and then I moved into a house with another friend who was doing a TV show. I ended up getting asked to leave that house.
Why? Because they just
it was just too much. I was crazy. It was hard to live with me.
And what? Yeah. So like, what's the crazy look like at that point?
Oh man, like. I'll tell you a couple of stories. Like this one guy that I used to be friends with from New York, we knew each other from college days. He was like my cocaine guy.
Right.
Like we would do cocaine and we would just get on crazy missions and we would like make beats together and we would do all this shit. And like cool. There was times like one time we were he had bought a place in Brooklyn and we were in Brooklyn and I remember like we were doing blow the whole night. And I got on the train the next morning to go back to my place. This was in New York.
Yeah.
And I get back to my place and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And I reach in my pocket to grab the blow and I pull out the bag and there's like a little Post-it folded up. And I open the Post-it and it says, love me or hate me. And then his name, like he had taken all my coke while I passed out. Like, but that was like my life story. People would steal shit from my house all the time when I black out. I was a huge blackout guy.
So you go. So you leave Wayne Isham, and then where do you go?
I get a job at Carsey Werner. I work for Tom Werner.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was
what are they making at that point? Are they done with? Are they making Friends at that point?
So they're on 30 Rock and what's the other show with the guys? Third Rock from the Sun. I'm not 30 Rock. Third Rock from the Sun.
Right.
And
so
the show with Ashton Kutcher, Danny Masterson.
Oh, right. That 70s show.
That 70s show. So I'm ping-ponging between those shows for him and like also like
that's great.
Setting up his voicemail machine at his house because Tom Werner can't do that for himself.
Sure.
So then I'm there. Then all of a sudden they get this show called You Don't Know Jack, which is Pee Wee Herman, right? It's like a game show that they were doing. So they're like, hey, we want to send. This is like 2001.
So this is the resurrection of Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah,
like
this is right
post
after Blow.
Oh, right,
after Blow.
So funny.
So basically, they send 5 of us in to interview for the assistant job, and I guess Pee Wee, I didn't know at the time, but I guess he liked me,
right?
And so I got that job,
nice.
And that was like $20 an hour, and I didn't have to deal with fucking all the crap I had to deal with over there at Tom. So I was like, I'll take the job.
Yeah,
so I take the job, and like that was the weirdest 6.5 months of my life. And then one day I woke up and a rib was out. I don't know if I got into a fight. I was in a blackout.
Right.
So like I don't know what had happened. But I woke up, I could not get out of bed.
Right.
And I called in and I was like, hey, I was like, I can't move. I got to go see a doctor. And they were like, okay, just let us know when you're feeling better. And then 3 or 4 days went by and I just never called. And that was the end of that job.
Right.
And then I was like, man, I'm just unemployable. So I was like, I'm just going to start selling drugs again.
Right.
So I, got some money together, bought a kilo, started selling. And then my final drug deal was I had a BMW X5.
Uh-huh.
I sold it. I traded it for 1.5 kilos and 2 Cadillacs that were really old.
Right.
And I took 1 kilo. I gave it to somebody to sell for me.
Right.
That person never gave me anything back.
Never heard from them again.
Nope. The other half a kilo, unfortunately, went up my nose and up other people's noses. And here I am with 2 Cadillacs, and I'm one person. So I left one on the street in New York.
Right.
And when I got sober, I drove the other one to LA in 2005. Well, I took it to Chicago first, and then I drove it to LA.
So you're back dealing drugs, and where are you? You're in New York?
No, I'm in LA when I'm
You're
selling
in LA.
drugs. Yeah, I was selling drugs in New York too.
Right. But I mean, so then what happens? How do you finally like fucking get out of this mess?
Well, so I mean, my alcoholism had, my mom was so loving that like she really, if it wasn't for my mom and grandma like always telling me that I was so good and I was so good at things and like I could do anything, I probably would have given up a long time ago.
Right. Because
I never got that from my dad growing up.
Right.
My dad really didn't understand emotional love.
Right.
And so,
Is he still alive?
Yeah. Right. We're good today.
Right.
But, it took me my 3rd year of sobriety at 33. I made amends to him. I wrote him a letter and we went to dinner at Matsuhisa and I read it to him and we talked and I apologized and I thanked him also because, I used to blame my dad for everything, but then I realized like I went back, I have a great sponsor and he took me through like this idea of like, who paid for college? And I was like, my dad. Who paid for your high school? My dad. Right. Who gave you the education that got you to where you are today? Sure. My dad. Right. Did my dad send me to boarding school when I needed to go to boarding school? Yes. Did my dad, when I took a year off of after high school because I was so short and I was scared to go to college at 5'5", did he send me to Europe for the year to study? Yes, he did.
Right.
Did he
Where'd
pay?
you go to boarding school?
I went to Loomis Chaffee for a year,
nice.
and then I got asked to leave. And then, like he did all these things for me that, like, he paid my rent sometimes when I couldn't pay it. Like he did things for me that, like,
it's like
I had to like go back and go. Like, you know what, dude? You gave me every opportunity to succeed. I just threw every opportunity away because of drugs and alcohol. Were more important to me to do that than it was to, try to make something of my life at that point. Not because I didn't think I could. I just didn't want to. I was so used to coasting. Right. And, I could get a girl. Right. I could get a job for a little bit. I had a place to live. Right. I had a car. I could afford to put gas in it. Yeah. So it was always like, like if I get into a jam, I'll sell some blow, and try not to sniff it all. It's like always like one of those things. Like I was like a chameleon. I could adapt to any circumstance I was in. So then what happens? So I'm in New York and I'm dying. Like literally. Like I had a stroke and a mild heart attack before when I was living in LA. Sorry to laugh. Wait, no. This is actually a good story. I was up for 5 days with these like Russian girls. Right. And this music guy and this other guy I know, who I no longer talk to. Right. And we were up for 5 days in my house. And I had like this huge diamond and chain, right? And I thought I must have hid it from myself because I didn't want the girls to steal it. Right. And then, like, for 2 days straight, all I did was yell at my 2 friends, like, which one of you stole my shit? Where's my chain, bro? And then finally, I find the chain, because I had my buddy come back over, and we, like, do blow for, like, another 24 hours. Right. I find the chain, my phone rings, and it's my trainer. Right. Why do I have a trainer? I don't know. I have no idea why you have any of these things. And he's like, yo, I'm coming to pick you up. It's training day. Right. Me, 5 days on a bender. I'm like, yeah, dude, cool. All right, I'll be ready. So I say to my buddy, I'm like, dude, you got to go. I'm like, get out of my house. I'm done with you. I got to go train. I got to go train. The last thing I remember is I put shoes on. Right. I go into his car. That's the last thing I remember. Right. Next thing I know, I'm in the hospital. I can't move. The left side of my body's paralyzed. Jesus. I have tubes everywhere. Right. There's doctors all around me. Right. I see my mom and my dad, and my mom's crying, and my dad's just like shaking his head like, you're an idiot. Like, what did you do this time? And I had a stroke and a mild heart attack because he took me to the Santa Monica stairs, and I tried to run them. And then I had never been to the stairs. Poor fucking
guy?
No, yeah, he actually, I love that guy. He saved my life. If he didn't take me to the hosptal, I don't know what would have happened to me.
Right. I mean, he's got to be like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, he knew that I was a fuck up. So.
Right. But I mean, he probably didn't. I mean, I wonder, like, you getting in that car if he's like.
He told me that I was like foaming at the mouth, and he said that when I got up to the top of the stairs, I fell over in the bushes, and I was like shaking, and like,
Jesus
and they called an ambulance. They brought me to the hospital,
Right.
and then that was it. You know,
Right.
I was there, and then I moved. So then I go to New York, right? I leave LA because I'm like, I got to get out of LA. I go to New York, geographic.
Yeah, good move.
Nothing changes.
Yep.
So now I've done so much cocaine and drank so much alcohol that literally like I'm spitting up blood. That when like there's an Asian escort service that knows me by Sherman, right? They just like, they know me. They're like, I call them every time, and I'm like, because half the time, you know, you're so high you can't, like, nothing happens, right? It's just more like I'm paying $200 so I can tell somebody how sad I am and cry for an hour and not get judged, right?
Right.
And like, you know, then I'm like spitting up blood, and you know, I'm calling them. I'm like, did I kill them? Like, did she get home okay?
Right.
And then like so I'm miserable. I go. My brother gets married on March 4th.
Your younger brother?
No, my older brother. March 4th.
Which one?
3, 4, 5.
The ice cream driving Rasta.
Yes, the Rastafarian. He gets married on March 4th, 2005, so that his cutlery can say 030405. Right?
Amazing.
He's a chef, so is his wife.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's a little tidbit for you.
Yeah.
So he gets married. I make a fool of myself at the wedding.
Right.
My mom comes up to me. It's the opening of Intervention was on.
Right.
The guy who's couch surfs, the blonde guy, and he was like couch surfing. Anyway, he's cocaine. He's like, oh, my mom comes in. I'm watching the show. I'm emotional because I know what that's like, right?
Yeah,
I know.
Sure.
I've been sad for a while at this point.
Yeah.
I've kind of just been going through the motions of life, never figuring out where I'm going to end up. She says to me, if you ever need help, I'll help you. I say, Mom, you can't help me.
Right.
Like, I don't want help. I'd rather die. Because at this point, I've just kind of written everybody off.
Yeah.
I leave there, and I go back to New York, and I go on like a 5-6 day bender with this girl that like was just bad news. And 2 of my friends come over and kind of do an intervention on me. But my one friend asked me, like, you know, because I would always cry, and I'd be like, I'm going to be such a good dad. Like, I'll be a better dad. You know, not that my dad wasn't a bad dad. It's just like he didn't show me the love that I wanted as a kid.
Right.
And like, you know, and he's not capable of that. So that's okay. You
right.
know? But so she says these things to me, and I say, wow, yes, I actually do want to do that.
Right.
So I call my mom, and it's March, and my mom says,
how much time has gone by since the wedding?
Like 4 days.
Oh, okay.
Right? This is like March 8th. I call my
Right.
mom. I'm like, I want to go somewhere. She goes, okay, I'll get on it. So she calls me back. She says, I'm going to send you to the Karen Foundation. I say, the Karen Foundation? Where's that? She goes, Philadelphia. I go, no, it's freezing in Philadelphia. I said, I got to go somewhere warm, Mom. I was like, I don't want to, it's cold. That's not going to help me. So, and my friend had told me that 2 of her friends wanted to go to Sierra Tucson, but they had committed suicide that night before they were supposed to leave. So I love that she asked me those questions that no one really had ever asked me before. And I love that she always cared about me getting well.
The questions she's asking are basically just about like
do you want to be a
how
dad?
are you going to do
want
it?
A life?
Right.
Like, don't you like you're like, again, like you're a good person, right?
Right.
Like I had heard it so many times, but I never heard it until she said it to me.
Right.
That I was like, man, I'm so tired of crying about how bad my life is, because I didn't have a bad life. I just had a shitty life.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. So I say to my mom, can you get me into this place, Sierra Tucson? I knew nothing about it.
Right.
I just knew it was in Arizona. She calls me back. She says, yes, they can take you on the 12th.
Right.
So I say, okay, great. So I get on the plane on the 12th.
Right.
And I go to Arizona.
Right.
And I land, and that's why I count the 13th as my sobriety date, because that night I went through terrible withdrawals and those crazy dreams when you're getting sober of like the weirdest shit I've ever
Were you sober
dreamt.
on the plane home?
I was not. I took on the plane to Arizona. No, my buddy had given me a bunch of Quaaludes, and I'd never taken pills before. And I remember getting off the plane. There was like a layover in like Minnesota, I think. And like I remember I looked like those like long-legged dead guys. Like I just was like walking around the airport, like whoa, like
it's amazing.
Yeah. I hate pills. I never took pills.
I don't like pills either.
I took them that one day. That was it. And so I got there, and I made it wasn't even like I made a commitment to myself. I just sort of like I tried to just listen. You know, I just try to change my.
Did you drink that night? You land?
No,
you don't. March 12th, you don't drink.
No, because I'm on the plane March 12th.
I guess I hated flying so much. I would always
March
be
11th. I was wasted.
Just a mess on the plane.
I got when I got out of treatment, a bookie called me and he's like, "Hey man, you owe me $13,000." I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?"
I'm sober.
I'm like, dude, I've been in rehab for 30 days. And he was like, "Yeah, dude, you bet on March 11th and you lost every game."
So when you knew you were going to rehab, were you like, all right, I'm going to just like blow it out for these last couple days?
No, I think I was like, I'm done.
Right. So you're just trying to kind of manage the
I was scared. I was more scared than I was like trying to get fucked up or loaded, you know? I was like, I was terrified because I knew that if I did this, it was going to be different. I didn't really understand different or know different.
What had you done at the wedding that was so catastrophic?
So I guess I took my pants down and did the worm. Mm-hmm. And then I also apparently was doing push-ups over a drink, calling it the alcoholic, where I would like go down, sip it, and then do a push-up. Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Anyways, my brothers were like, you really are just a fucking loser.
And so who orchestrates the intervention? It's just like friends.
Just my friend, this wonderful person named Dina that like I'll forever be grateful to because she really was the person.
How many people show up for that thing? It's her.
Well, my buddy who took the train with me was like, dude, you need help. Like, and meanwhile, this guy was a complete fucking jack-o'-lantern as well. Right. But you know, like, and then the guy that I was working with at the time, who was the biggest scumbag ever in my business, we had like a clothing company. Right. He was like, you need to get sober. We have a meeting with Fred Siegel and you missed the plane. And I was like, all right, dude. Just shut up. I was like, buddy, have you met Diane? I've been sleeping with Diane for 6 straight fucking days, smoking cocaine. Like, you think I'm going to Fred Siegel to sell cashmere, bro? That shit ain't happening. Like.
So does he come to your intervention, your business partner?
No. It was just like a thing at my house. They all intervened because I missed the plane to Fred Siegel. That was the beginning of it. Right. Then Dina came over, and Dina and I had this crazy heart-to-heart. Right. And when she told me that her friends had died, I don't know, for some reason it resonated with me that at that moment. Like I just thought about that, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to die right now. Like for once in my life, I really didn't want to die. And you know, when I was younger, man, my little brother and I, a couple of times, like I don't think my mom knows this, and I'm sure she'll never listen to this, but you know, he and I, we made 2 suicide pacts when we were kids and tried to kill ourselves together.
With what?
With ties. We wrapped ties around our neck and we'd close the door on each other and try to kill ourselves. Right. Jesus. I mean, no kid should have to feel that way, and you know, it's like it's crazy to think about that. So, you know, anyway, so I get to Sierra Tucson and, you know, I have this wonderful counselor and there's one guy there who's like running like one of the groups and he's just, you know, he went to prison. So he thinks he's like this super tough guy. He's like this short little Latin dude. Right. And he tells me you're never going to make it. Your ego is going to get in your way for your entire life. That's constructive. And I remember and I was like, I just remember thinking like, this guy clearly doesn't know me because like, you know, my ego is attached to alcohol and drugs. Like I'm not walking around the world thinking I'm better than anybody when I'm normal and I'm sober. But when I'm drunk and high, yes, I'm going I'm going to take over the world. Right. You know? And so I took that as like a challenge. And I made sure that like when... Do
you think he knew you'd take that as a challenge? Was he trying to like challenge you?
No, I think he really legitimately... Really I mean, you know, like the stats of rehab are insane.
Yeah, they're insane.
It's like 8% of people stay. So, so only 3 people from my group stayed sober for the consecutive...
How many people were in there?
Years in March. I think there were 68 people in my group.
And how many are dead?
I have no idea. Right. Because I didn't keep in touch with
keep in touch with the sober
people. But a lot of people like relapsed during family week, like because their wives served them papers and then they'd get a hotel room and drink. Like, I mean, it was crazy. My one buddy relapsed. This other guy ended up going to prison, and Collect called me from prison. I sponsored him for his first 5 years. He has 13 years. He'll have 13 years in September. That's amazing. He did 1 year in jail and got sober in prison. I sponsored him for 5 years. He's amazing, this guy. He goes and teaches like kids, like burn victims, nutrition and health and all this stuff. I tried to get him to come speak at our men's group, but he told me he was too busy, which I laughed at.
That's cool.
Yeah, remember when you nodded out in Chicago? Were you too busy, man? My cousin almost killed him.
So you get out, and what's it like?
It was different because I went back to New York. My dad came with me. We moved my stuff out, put it into storage. Right. And then I went straight to Chicago.
Right. Why?
So I went back to New York for 2 days with my dad. Moved all my
shit
stuff
out, right?
because I didn't want to go back to New York. I was dating somebody. I knew it wasn't going to work. I couldn't. There were so many triggers. I never even told people I went to rehab. I just left.
Right.
Like nobody knew where I was.
And why Chicago?
Except for my best friend. She was the only person that knew.
Right.
So then I went to Chicago because I met this guy, and my roommate in rehab. It was the best thing ever, by the way. In rehab, I get there and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're rooming with Greg," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." Like, I don't know who Greg is. So then, like, I'm in this group and I'm talking to all the dudes and they're like, "What's up, man? What are you here for?" You know, like, that's like the rehab thing. You know?
Right.
All kinds of shit, man.
Right.
Like, life. I suck at life.
Yeah.
And then, like, they were like, "Who's your roommate?" And I was like, "Greg." They're like, "Oh, fuck, dude." And I was like, "Wait, why? What's that about?" He's like, he's got sleep apnea. And I was like, I didn't even know what sleep apnea was at the time.
Right.
And I remember, like, I walked in and this motherfucker looked like Darth Vader. And he was this big ass dude, and he was crazy.
Right.
And like, I ended up, we became good friends. And he was like, "You can come live with me in Chicago."
Right.
He lived in the boondocks. I was 2.5 hours outside of Chicago in a farmhouse.
Right. You're like, this is not Chicago.
Yeah. So I'm living at Greg's house, by the way. Okay. He goes to post rehab in Dallas for aftercare.
Right.
One night while I'm sleeping, somebody's trying to climb in the window.
Right.
And I'm like, hello? So I go to the window and it's this skinny woman. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Where the fuck is Greg?" And I'm like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Who are you?" Next thing I know, I get a call from Dallas. It's Greg. He's like, "I heard my ex-girlfriend tried to break into the house. Don't let her in the house." I'm like, "Greg, first of all, that scared the shit out of me. Like, why is she trying to break in? Am I safe here?" You know, like I was like newly sober. I was like kind of trying to figure out life.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like about 2 months into staying at Greg's house, all of a sudden one night I come home and I like hear a TV on. And so like, I was like, "Oh, maybe I left the TV on." So I go into Greg's office and I'm on the phone and I'm talking. And all of a sudden, like, I hear somebody and I come into the hallway and there's this big ass dude in his underwear. And I'm like, "Greg?" And he's like, "What the fuck?" And I was called Tank because they wouldn't call me. They wanted me to use my first name and I don't go by my first name. So they wouldn't call me Sherman. So they called me Tank in rehab. Right. And he's like, "Tank, are you on the phone? Who are you on the phone with, the police?" And I'm like, "Dude, what? First of all, what are you doing home? Aren't you supposed to be in Dallas?" And he's like, "Who are you on the phone with?" I'm like, "I'm talking to my friend." And he's like, "Fuck you, Tank. I'm going to kill you." And I'm like, "Dude, you get." So I run out of the house because he's big. He starts chasing me. So I run out of the house. I call my cousin. I'm like, "Dude, you got to come get me."
Right.
And my cousin's crazy. He's like mafia, like nut job. And he's like, "I'm coming. I'm bringing my gun. I'm going to fucking kill this guy if he touches you." I'm just like trying to hide outside.
You're like, I'm
terrified.
the cornfield.
Yeah, terrified of this guy. I come back in like 2 hours later because I don't hear anything.
Right.
I go upstairs. He's passed out to like porn on the fucking, you know, those big ass ugly flat screens that just sit on the floor. And like crack rocks all over the bed.
Oh, God.
So I immediately text my cousin. I'm like, "Dude, you got to come now."
Right.
And bring a van or something. We'll grab all my shit and we'll go. So we do that. He takes me. I stay at his house for a week and then I rent a townhome in Cabrini Green.
Where is Greg now?
Greg, I don't know. I left Greg. I never
Right,
talked
gone.
to him again.
That's amazing.
I never saw him again.
How crazy.
Yeah. So I get out of there. I never talked to him
And why
again.
Cabrini Green?
Because my friend, this girl that I dated, her mom had bought a townhome there. So she was like, "I'll lease you my townhome because no one's using it." Obviously, no one was living in Cabrini Green.
That seems insane.
I was like, "Great, I'll take it."
A townhome in Cabrini Green, like, what is that all about?
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
It's very strange, man. I got a lot of shit thrown at me and I got called a lot of names, but you know, it is what it is, man.
And what did you do while you were there? Like, what were you doing for work?
So I worked at the local YMCA. I mentored kids, and that was what I did. I didn't do anything for 9 months. I was like, I need, you know, my dad took care of me, helped me out, gave me a little cash.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to stay sober. I had like a credit card that had like $200 a month.
Right.
And, you know, I stayed sober. Like, that was it.
Small
I went to
life.
a meeting every day. I went to the Mustard Seed. I went to like Hazleton there in Chicago.
Right, sure.
And like, that was it. I just, for 9 months, I really just wanted to learn about myself.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, from the time I was like 12 until the time I was 29, I was using and drinking almost every day of my entire life.
Sure.
So I just wanted to figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, you know, what made me smile, what didn't make me smile, you know, job wise, what could I do? What did I do? Do I want to go back to film? No, I didn't want to at the time, you know, so.
And so what do you decide makes you happy? Like what then gets you to sort of leave?
So I had a clothing company that I had started
What
before.
was that called?
It was called Laminated Soul in the beginning, which was cashmere, which by the way, I would show up to like Brunello Cucinelli meetings and Loro Piana meetings to buy cashmere.
Right.
And like with front all gold teeth, drunk off my ass, with like a $300,000 check. And like I ended up with like 22 rolls of cashmere when I got sober. That I ended up making my mom and grandma like scarves forever. They had like 58 scarves of cashmere. And then like so that went away. Then I started a t-shirt company called Empire State. And I was actually really good at it and super successful. I was way before my time.
Right.
And I did really well.
What kind of tee? Was it like graphic design
graphic
stuff?
tees, yeah. And then I did the magic show.
You still have some of that shit?
I do in a trunk, but most of it I donated. I gave it all away.
Yeah.
It's it's nice to get rid of that stuff. And yeah, so I did that. I was super successful, and then like Theory almost bought my company. I was very close to getting bought by them. Baron Davis almost bought my company at one point, and then like when they didn't, I kind of just lost the passion for it. I think it was just so much to do as one person.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to get back into film. That's where my heart got back into writing. I started writing a lot when I got sober.
Yeah.
And I think it was so helpful and healing for me. And I could get stories off my chest. I took a great writing class that really changed my life.
Who's that?
Jack Grapes.
Jack Grapes.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about Jack Grapes. I'd like to give Jack Grapes a call.
Dude, he's the best. I sent a couple of my interns to
Oh,
him.
yeah.
And I send anyone.
Is he still doing his thing?
The barista at Go Get 'Em. I sent her to the Karen. I paid for her. Yeah,
I think about Jack Grapes all the time. I was just listening to Dennis.
Did you do Jack Grapes?
I did two rounds, but I was drunk for a lot of it, but it was fine.
That class changed my life, man. Did you make a chapbook?
Sure, I do. Yeah,
we got to exchange chapbooks.
Mine's so embarrassing.
No, we got to exchange chapbooks, dude.
I will. I'll do that after this thing. I'll look at make sure.
I took a baby picture of me and did tattoos all over my arms, and then it says nothing. My title was "Nothing Good Ever Happens After Midnight."
I can't remember what mine's called.
I have some left.
So
I'll give you one.
Funny.
I'll sign it for you. You got to give me.
Yeah. I think I only have the one.
But how great is that class?
It's great.
I mean,
it's really cool. He's a good teacher. I should go back to it.
I'll
curious
do that with
to
you.
see
I'd go back and do a course.
What I've learned. What's changed. How my perspective's changed since then.
I would totally.
So, but I mean, how do you get out of Chicago? Like what's the motivating thing?
I get out of Chicago because that was it. I only wanted to spend 9 months.
You did your thing, and you're like, I've done my time.
Yeah.
And then how do you choose
so
LA?
It was either New York or LA.
Right.
I called that ex-girlfriend I was dating at the time. We had a long conversation, and we decided that it was best that we didn't pursue our relationship. And for that reason, I no longer needed New York.
Right.
That was the only thing that would have made me go back was like if we could have salvaged what we had, but we really never had anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was all.
Right. Fucked up. How can you possibly be?
I don't know how any woman dated me when I was drunk or high. Yeah. Like, that's a whole nother podcast.
Right. Totally.
And so I decided LA, and I came to LA for 2 weeks.
Right.
Stayed at my best friend's house.
Uh-huh.
In those 2 weeks, I rescued a pit bull that then lived at her house.
Right.
Which was the most fucked up thing ever because I wasn't living there. So wrong.
Right.
But remember, I'm still like under a year sober and I was just making like crazy rash decisions.
Right.
But in that 2 weeks, I went to a ton of meetings and I just fell in love with the AA out here.
Right.
And like I just felt really comfortable. Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, we're so lucky to have that here.
Dude.
People don't realize, but that thing is like, it's intense.
I was going to, what's the club that turned into One Oak? The noon meeting there, the rock and roll meeting. What was the name of the bar? Anyway.
No idea.
I would go there every day at noon. Like that was my meeting.
Right.
And then Log Cabin every day at 7:30 a.m. For my first 5 years, I went to the Log Cabin.
And, so you come out here for 2 weeks and then you go back home, get your shit together? No, you just stayed.
No, I moved here. Yeah, I rented an apartment.
Where were you living?
Pico and Crest.
I don't know why I always ask that. I'm just fascinated.
It's like a total Jewish
It's like the Californians, How did you get there?
It was because it was cheap and my dad would pay for half of it. That's how I got there.
Right. And what do you start doing for work? Are you trying to get a job? Or
I got a job.
Yeah,
I had all kinds of jobs. No, I had all kinds of jobs. I mean, I did everything. I worked wherever I could.
Right.
Did whatever I could. And then what happened is I had a female sponsor for about 5 years.
Right.
And
That's
her mom was
unconventional.
doing the Jack Grapes class.
Right.
So she got me, she was like, hey, you should take this class with me. So I did. And
Right.
then I started writing again.
Right.
And I was working for a friend of mine that I was sponsoring who went to Boston University as well.
Right.
He had a sandwich shop downtown.
Uh-huh.
I hated it.
So you're writing your first pilot?
I wrote my first pilot, and then, you know, I left Graham and Papa's when I sold it. And
Who bought it?
Phoenix Pictures.
Phoenix Pictures, I worked there.
You did?
Yeah,
Oh,
for 5 years.
Brad
Fisher.
Brad Fisher. I really liked Brad Fisher. What happened to him? I don't know what happened.
He partnered with Jamie Vanderbilt and Leda Kalogridis in a company called Mythology, and I think Leda has left it, but he and Jamie still have it, and he's doing well. Like,
Cool,
he's
man.
a
He was a
bona
good
fide
dude.
producer.
Yeah, he hooked me up. He looked out for me.
Yeah, no,
But
he's
they
a smarty
put me with
pants.
this guy for my TV show, and he was just a nightmare. Every pitch meeting we went to, they were like it just didn't work.
Right.
And he was the Chris Rock show and Bernie Mac show guy.
Right.
And also he tried to change my show from football to basketball.
Right.
You know, all this bullshit
Right.
that goes with producing. That's what ultimately led me to saying I want to produce.
Right.
Because I had written my first script, which was called Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, which was loosely based on my life.
Right. Oh, wow.
And so I wanted to make it. I was
Right.
like, I'm just gonna.
Right.
I want to make it for like $100,000.
Right.
I'll star in it. I'll do
Right.
this, that, and the other thing. And then I was like, I got to learn how to produce because
Right.
clearly these producers suck.
Yeah,
Like, every
yeah,
producer-
totally.
They put me with this other guy who actually I saw at John and Vinny's the other night,
Uh-huh.
and I hate this guy so much. And I often think, even at 14 years, I think about punching him in the face.
Did you say hi to him or anything?
Never. He's
Right.
just he's so small. I'd hurt
Right.
him.
Right.
If I punched him, I'd probably.
I always find it weird, like running into people that I despise out there in the world, because you
Yeah.
see them, and then you're like, I'm always like, hey, how's it going? And I
He's
kiss her
not a
ass.
good human being. He cheated on my friend's wife with her,
Right.
and this is a good story actually. So I'm sober in this story.
Right.
So my buddy calls me and he's like, "Yo, we're going to the Maxim. Remember when Maxim would have those big parties at the
totally.
Fox lot?
Uh-huh.
So he's like, "We're going to the Maxim party." So I'm like, "All right, cool."
Max amount of business? Or
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
This is
Right.
probably 2007.
Right.
And we go, because it had to be 2007.
Right.
And we go and we're there, and it's 5 of us, and all of a sudden my buddy's like, he's here, and I'm like, who? And he's like, the guy's fucked my wife. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, wait, dude, you brought me to a Maxim party? I'm trying to get laid.
Right,
now
right,
you got me in a fight?
right.
And then he's like, we got to go up to him. So we walk, and I'm like, all right, dude, but don't start a fight here, dude.
Right.
That's embarrassing.
Right.
Because now I'm sober, so
Yeah, yeah.
fights are
Right,
embarrassing,
you're,
right?
trying to have a career.
If I was drunk, I'd be like, well,
Yeah,
let's
let's
fucking
fuck him
kill
up.
him. Yeah, exactly. So he goes over to him, and he looks at him, and I'm watching this. They're face to face like this, right? And I'm watching him, and he says something, and he just goes, spits, and it hits his eye, and it just slowly, like a fucking raw egg, just starts crawling down his face. And I was like, oh my God, that is the most disrespectful thing.
That's so
but
gross.
If somebody slept with my wife, I probably would, if I wasn't going to beat the shit out of them, I probably would spit in their face too, because it is the most disrespectful thing you can do.
It is pretty fucking
But anyway,
gross.
so fast forward to my second show.
Right.
I get off the ground. So Brad Fisher said, I'm going to bring you in with another guy. So I go into the meeting. Now, I never had an interaction with this guy. I was just standing there, right? So I was watching it. So all of a sudden, the guy walks in, and I'm like, oh my God.
It's him.
That guy.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. How? Why?
Right.
Why?
Well, yeah, well, I mean,
Why do you keep doing this to me, dude?
Is it this funny?
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at him, but I'm trying not to look at him because I'm like, God, I hope he doesn't recognize me from standing there. So meanwhile, we start working for 3 months, and he's calling me late at night constantly, talking to me, because I know he wants to try to talk to me to get somewhere. I know he started to realize that I was there. Right. And my other buddy's like, dude, you're working with him? How are you working with him? I'm like, dude, I have no choice. They bought my show for no money, and they put me with this guy.
Right.
I haven't sold the show in a year. This is my last chance to try to sell it. I was like, I can't do anything. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, so about 4 months later, the show's dead.
Right.
And he's like, hey, can we go to dinner? And we go to dinner, and he was like, I know you were there. And I was like, hey, dude, look, here's the deal. You did something to my friend. That's between you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not a part of this.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but why didn't you ever say anything? I'm like, because it's none of my business.
Right.
I'm like, dude, you want my honest opinion? I would have beat the shit out of you. I'm glad he didn't, because it would have been embarrassing for all of us there. but like, you're lucky he didn't beat you up. Like, you cheated on his wife.
Yeah,
with him.
like what the fuck do you expect?
Yeah, I don't owe you shit, bro. Like,
Right.
and so I always see him at these restaurants.
Right.
Like, literally, I see him at fucking Matsuhisa. I see him at John and Vinny's. It's like on my restaurant list.
Right.
And like, I just like, I loathe him because
Right.
he stole a year of my life and he slept with my friend's wife and
Almost
didn't get beat
enough
up.
to make you eat at different restaurants.
No, but I wish I could put
It
his
would be
picture in
for
the
me.
back.
Right.
And be like, do not serve this dude.
Right. Spit in this guy's food. Jerk off on this guy's burger.
Hair in spaghetti.
So you have this script based loosely on your life, and you're kind of trying to produce that, and then how does that lead to Bow and Arrow?
So I called my business partner, who I'm partners with now, my buddy Matt, and he was doing the LeBron James documentary.
We call him in my company. We call him Matt Produciero.
That's hilarious. In New York, at our where we stay in New York, they call Mr. Pecorino. They don't know his name. The guy's hilarious. I'm like, actually, Pecorino's a cheese. But anyway, and so Matt and I called Matt, and Matt and I had written a script called Mall Cops.
Oh, right.
That I had come up with, that
Right.
we had written together, and that our friend Kyle, who directed Fanboys, went into a general with Adam Sandler and told him that we were making this movie about mall cops. And then 2 weeks later, Adam Sandler, because he's a notorious thief,
Right.
does it all the time,
Right.
did it to my other buddy, and announced Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Right.
So I was really mad at these guys for like 2
Sure.
years. And I had also raised them $3.5 million at rehab. I met this guy from Manchester, England, who was super rich.
Right.
And I had the script Fanboys with me, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to make this movie, Fanboys." Like, I was like, if I can make the money, I can make the movie. So I flew to Manchester. I got the money from him.
Wow.
And yeah, and then they went with the Weinstein Company. So bad on them. But so we didn't talk for like 3 years, and I came back to him in like 2010.
Right.
And I was like, "Hey," I was like, "I really want to learn how to produce."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, well, I'm working on this project." I was like, "No, call me when you have something interesting." So then he called me like about 6 months later. He's like, "Hey, I'm doing this documentary on John Milius. Do you want to be a part of it?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Fucking, did that movie get made?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Milius. It's a great
I've never seen it, but I spent a lot of time with
It
Milius.
was on Epics. Yeah, it's on iTunes.
I
now.
got to check that out.
But so we make this documentary, and that was my first forte into film. And
Right.
like, I had a
cool.
Banksy flower thrower.
Right.
And I sold it, and I financed the movie for us.
Wow.
That was my intro to film.
What does a Banksy flower thrower sell for?
Back then, it was like, I think I bought it for not much and sold it for like a little over 120,000, I think.
And what is it? What would that thing sell for now?
Probably about 500, 400.
Right.
400, 500.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, so that was it. And then we got started. We made Milius, and then we had a really good experience working together. We both loved film, and then we did 2 other movies together independently. He was with his former company, and I
Right.
was just a solo producer, and we sort of like had an alignment of taste. And I was like, "Hey, I raised money a long time ago and didn't take it, so I'm going to go back to that person and ask if we can get money from them."
Is this the Manchester guy?
No, this is a group.
Where's that
in
Manchester
Philly.
guy? I'm going to go call him up.
Roland Bardsley. I have no idea. Roland, wherever you are, he got mad at me because
Roland, I need a couple hundred
I
grand.
bought 100 pairs of trainers when I went to visit him, and I shipped them back. And he was like, "No problem, my people will ship them." And then like 6 months later, I got a call from him, and he was like, "Hey, you owe me $1,000." I'm like, "For what?" And he's like, "The shipping." I was like, "Dude, I would have just mailed them post office." I was
Right.
like, "You told me you were going to take care of it."
Right.
And then we got into this back and forth, and then I told him to fuck off, and I've
Right.
never talked to him
Right.
since. But so then Matt and I we started Bow and Arrow in 2013, and we made 34 films.
Wow. You guys have made 34 films?
34 films,
Shit,
yeah.
That's a lot of movies.
Yeah, man.
So,
I'm
I
tired.
mean, at the very start of this interview, you were talking about how 2 weeks ago you were going to kill yourself. You don't seem suicidal to me.
No, it was the first time in my entire sobriety that the thought of killing myself had come into my mind.
And why?
And so for me, the good news is I was able to go to a meeting.
Right.
And look, when I got to that meeting on Tuesday, I wasn't ready to share. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I had so much anger.
Right.
And like, one of the things is, I have a 4-month-old, and like my wife is like, "You cannot be on a work call in the house if you're going to talk that way.
Sure.
But I had gotten that, like, that person had made me so angry that I had gone back to the old me, which was like, okay, I just gave my people your address. They'll come and see you this year. Good luck. Have fun going to work every day.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's where my head goes.
Right.
Like, oh, this guy wants to fuck with me? Let me teach him a lesson. I'm not like your average producer. You know? I'm not like a white guy from Brentwood. You know? Like, that's not who I am, you know? And I was so mad about it. And I went to that meeting and, you know, I shared honestly and open because that's where I feel most comfortable sharing. And, you know, I cried and I was scared because, you know, it's like I had shared about, like, you know, my wife is having a lot of trouble dealing with, you know, her parents are sick and our daughter's new, and it's like, it's a lot, and it's, I didn't want to trouble her with it, but like I couldn't sleep for like 2 nights. I was tossing and turning with just vengeance, and you know, I have a gun and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, what if I just went outside and like, or driving my car, I'd be like, you know, I could easily just crash my car. And like, I know I've already set Delilah up with education, so like she would be able to go to school. Carrie could have all my shit. Like, my shit is just my shit. And like, I just was like, whoa, where's that coming from? You know, like, it was like, wow, why am I feeling like this? And then I went to that meeting, I shared. And then I, you know, the reason why I shared is because while we were doing meditation, the other group was there and they said the Serenity Prayer. And for some reason, I like, when I heard it, I was like, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. What's happening with my movie? You know, the courage to change the things I can. The negative feelings I have towards it. And the wisdom to know the difference. Know that I'm going to be okay. Whatever the result is. And like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my God. I just like took a deep breath. And I just like started thinking like, you know, like, I can't control. All I can do is go make the best film possible. I can't control anything else. And for me, you know, it was more about like, you know, just a sense of serenity and calmness that like sobriety has given me, and able to like pause and say, you know, like, what is more important? Like, I have a wife and a daughter that is more important than any of these films will ever be to me. And if I leave them, there's no explanation for that. You know, what are they left with? Grief and frustration and anger for their lives. And I was like, over a movie? You know? But it's like, my alcoholism really kicked my ass that day.
But you know, really... I mean, there's also this thing, it sounds dumb, but man, making a movie is an epic journey, you know? It really is. And even though it seems dumb, I mean, it is like, it's hard. You know, it's hard, and like, you know, you invest a lot of time and yourself into it, and I know it seems so sort of silly, but you know, that's the life you lead too. You know, you got to look at that, like that thing isn't just the thing that you made; it's the whole experience of making it, and all those relationships involved, and you know, your expectations and you know, all the emotion you put into that. So when that shit goes to when that shit, you know, really turns in a way that you're not anticipating, it can be fucking so demoralizing.
And for guys like us who make independent films, it's even harder. We're up against so much more than anybody else, you know. You have like 4 places that can actually buy your movie and pay you the proper amount that you deserve for a film you've worked on. Whereas like everybody else is just lowballing you to put it in their library. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's the other frustrating part. So,
but it worked out.
It did work out. I'm so grateful to HBO. They are so nice and transparent. Which was a big thing for me. And, you know, they're able to communicate and tell me the truth. And they love the film, as do I. I think it's a wonderful film. And it's going to come out in April.
Cool.
And I
can't wait to see it. I'm bummed I missed it. I didn't get to Sundance this year. But...
We're going to do a special screening here, too. And you should see it because it's in anamorphic. Maddie Liberty shot it. It's a beautiful film.
I'd love to. It looks really cool.
Gorgeous.
Well, Sherman, thank you so much. Tank, it's great to it's great to sit. It's an amazing story. It's really I had no idea what I was getting into, but it's like it's so fucking delightful. So
I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
For having me.
Awesome, man. Drunkalogs cover art is designed and created by John DeManil, and the Drunkalogs theme song is composed and performed by Stephen Stout. I am Nick Morton.